And last time we separated out our garment. So that was the first part of the geo that we needed to deal with. And and so I'm going to do that using the redshift materials down here. Just like we were making different colors for things or different parts of the garment, I'm just going to make a new material. And you can just Alt-G. System. So we're just going to call this environment. And we can call this cloth BG, cloth background. And then we've got this material up here that's going down on all of these. So let's just jump into our shader graph. And I've got mine docked here. I usually use a larger monitor so things aren't so squished, but for our purposes here, let me just pull this out. See, it's totally reflective. Super shiny, and that's interesting in and of itself. So a matte surface. So you can come over here and there's all these different tabs that are preset for you in the basic Redshift material. So you've got the diffuse, which you can think of as the color. We've been changing that already. And in the reflection, we've got a bunch of different settings here. This is just the reflective surface here. So if I change the roughness in this area, that's going. So you have the full path here, lets you know exactly where it is. And what I put in is just this image here. So it's a simple black and white image that I just made by using Illustrator, or you can do it in Photoshop too. Just picking a font, typing out what you want, and we're going to be using this as the logo for the company, for this fashion design company. Okay, and now that we've got that in our texture, you can see it here. And I'm just going to tick on this gamma override and then connect this directly into this blue of the material. And we just want to do diffuse for now so that we can see what we're working with. And you can see it's just using the full size of the image. So if you ever want to shrink this, so if you wanted more copies of this to tile, you could go over here to remap and you can increase this. So you might think that going smaller would require you to shrink this down. And I do that a lot as I'm moving around. So if I'm zooming around the viewport, or if you see a bunch of Control Z's over here, that's what's going on. Okay, so I've got this basic material here. Now all I want to do with this is use this as a mask to control the color of my background. A color layer is simply just a more complicated, well, not more complicated, just there's more fidelity and you can do a lot more things with the color layer option. So maybe we'll just use that. But for our purposes here, I just want to show you the color mix. So just make this more obvious. Actually, I'll just keep it white, so it's super clear. Okay, so now we're mixing these two colors using the texture that we plugged into the mix amount. So wherever it's white, we should see, I can't remember which. So this is really useful for creating a bunch of different textures, blending things together, and creating these interesting graphic textures. So I actually want to make this quite a bit smaller. So let me try something like 8 and see how that looks. Okay, so that's more like what I had on the course. Like I said before, you can use the color layer for the same sort of thing. It gives you these different layers. Just color mix a lot, it's a lot quicker in some ways, but the color layer gives you a lot more flexibility. So it's up to you, whatever works best for you. So let's just stick with the color layer. Try out some different colors. And this is also where you can add different textures into here. So let's give it a noise so we can see. So I'm just going to type in. Okay. So you can see whatever you pipe into here will be wherever the black is in our image here. Okay. And often what I will do is, let's just use this color mix here. Okay, so we have one darker one and one slightly lighter one. And then we're going to use this noise as the mix here instead of our logo. And then we'll use this as the base color input. Okay, so now we're actually getting a different, or a bit of variation in our color using this noise. The bigger your noise is going to be. So this is just a way to add a bit more variation into your scenes. And that's a bit more interest is add a bump. So let's just type in bump here and bring down a bump map. And a bump map is going to take an input and it's going to give us and then down into bump. Okay, and then we could use something like a noise. Go into the bump, into the texture input, and then we can scale this down. And you can see, as I shrink this down, you can start to see what it's doing. It's adding a bit of surface detail. Let's go ahead and make a new camera here so we can move around our scene. Just have a look at this. And I'm going to make sure to turn off. As I change the scale of this, we're just adding a bit of detail onto here. It's a bit intense. So you can just play with this scale, find something that you like, and you can even use something like the color mix as a way to add some more variation here. So let's grab that color mix. And then we can copy this noise and make some alterations to it, make it a little bigger. And then we could put these two noises together. Grab between two different noises so we can add even more variation to it. So you can see some of these places have smaller bumps, some of these have larger, some areas have larger bumps. So this is just a really quick way to okay. We'll be able to see this a lot easier once we get into the lighting. Right now it's kind of hard to tell exactly what's going on. Okay, and something that you could also try, have a look at, would be using the texture that we have here as another bump object. So let's just go into our bump again, type in bump. so I don't have to do this. Okay, so we can see we've got our bump here. Let me just move the camera a little bit. And so what we're going to be doing is just adding a bump to this white part here. So let me just increase the value. On these levels. Oh yeah, we just need to increase the weight of layer 0. Okay, so you can see now we have this texture added on to our other bump here. So you can see the difference. So you can see this black outline around. That's just the increased height on our bump map. So this is the basics of actually just using noises to add variation and using the bump blender to combine noises and combine textures to create an interesting look. Negative as well, so if you wanted to do -2, that will invert it, invert your bump. Okay. And if you wanted this to be more apparent, we could even do a displacement. So let's just use displacement here, just as a quick example. Now change on here because we do not have an object tag on our turn off smooth subdivisions, otherwise you're going to have this where it rounds out everything. So let's just turn off smooth subdivisions. Okay, there we go. Let me just undo so we can see a little bit closer. And then if we go down here to displacement, you can see it's off. So let's just turn that on. We can see what happens. Now let's just subdivide these. So let's just pull this down. The bump and the normals. You can see here that it actually affects the geometry that we're working with, which does require a high subdivision, which is why we use the tag here. And actually I find it works better if you have the sRGB selected. Okay. So that's that. Just hide that. We can look at our cloth background as well. So we've got that. And let's just try putting our objects that we had on there, our materials that we have for the other one. Yep, you can see that just helps smooth that out a little bit. Okay, so that's a really basic environment. All right, so let's go back to our basic room environment. And then we're going to do a couple things. We're going to import a few accessories, namely the shoes and the okay. So we've got those in our scene. I'll provide these as well. These are a free asset, and I'll show you where I found them as well. But I'll have these available. And we'll just position these around the face here. Doesn't have to be perfect. Let's just get them roughly where glasses would be. And a lot of this is going to be covered up by hair anyways, so we can deal with that when we get there. Okay. And then we've just got some basic sneakers that I've added into the scene. And these I got off the Daz store, so I cannot provide these for you in the course, but I will show you where I got them. And at this point, you may need to adjust your environment so that your shoes are not intersecting. So we can just do that by grabbing our environments and just dragging them down a little bit. Just like that. Really simple. Okay. And we've got some basic materials on here. Geometry, and let me just quickly show you where I got some of these assets, or where you can find other things that you might find useful. That's actually where I got the shoes that I'm using in the course. I also want to show you a couple other sites that you can find models. So CG Trader is another great place. So if I just type in sneakers, plenty of things here that you can purchase, but there's also this little checkbox here for free, which lets you see all the things that are on here that are interesting. Not a ton. Same thing with sunglasses. I'm sure there's a game though, so I will not be going into that today. Another site, TurboSquid, same thing. You can search for different models. Free things if you're looking to get something quick. And then another thing that I find really useful is actually the ArtStation Marketplace. There's not a ton of you there.